I woke up at 3 in the morning to the sound of my newborn daughter crying, and when I reached across the bed, my wife was gone. Not just out of bed, gone. Her side was cold, like she'd been missing for hours, and there was an envelope on her pillow with my name written in her handwriting. I remember staring at that envelope for what felt like forever, holding Olivia against my chest while she screamed for a feeding, and knowing with absolute certainty that my life had just split into before and after. The note inside wasn't an apology. It was a manifesto about freedom and self-discovery and how she couldn't breathe anymore in this life we'd built. She wrote that she loved me, but loved herself more, that motherhood felt like drowning, and that she needed to go live with Julian, some musician she'd met at a gallery opening 3 months earlier, because he understood her in ways I apparently never could. There was no phone number, no forwarding address, just a single line at the bottom that said, "I hope someday you'll understand." I didn't understand. I was holding our 6-week-old daughter who was hungry and helpless, and the woman who'd promised to build a life with me had just walked out in the middle of the night like we were some kind of prison sentence she'd finally escaped. My name is Mateo, and 15 years ago my wife abandoned me and our newborn daughter to go live with her lover. I'm not telling you this story for sympathy or because I want you to think I'm some kind of hero. I'm telling you because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about love, family, and what it actually means to be a parent. Before that night, I was just a regular guy with a regular life. I'd worked my way up to financial manager at a mid-sized firm in Chicago by age 25, paid my mortgage on time, drove a used Honda Accord, and thought that being steady and reliable was enough to make someone happy. Elena was different. She was an art curator with this energy that filled every room she walked into, always talking about exhibitions and installations and artists I'd never heard of. When we met at a fundraiser, I was the boring accountant in the corner nursing a beer, and she was the vibrant creative who somehow found me interesting. We dated for 2 years, got married in a small ceremony by the lake, and when she got pregnant with Olivia, I thought we'd finally built something permanent. I remember thinking I'd done everything right: stable job, nice apartment, savings account for the baby's college fund. But what I didn't realize was that for Elena, security felt like suffocation. The pregnancy was hard on her, not just physically but mentally. She stopped going to gallery openings, stopped seeing her friends, spent most days on the couch scrolling through her phone with this distant look in her eyes. I thought it was just hormones or pregnancy exhaustion, so I tried to pick up the slack, cooking meals, doing extra housework, telling her everything would get better once the baby came. But after Olivia was born, things got worse instead of better. Elena would hold our daughter with this mechanical efficiency, feeding her and changing her like she was going through a checklist rather than bonding with her own child. I'd come home from work and find her staring out the window while Olivia cried in her bassinet. And when I'd ask if she was okay, she'd say, "I'm fine, just tired," in this flat voice that told me she wasn't fine at all. I started noticing the wine bottles in the recycling bin piling up faster than before, the way she'd pour herself a glass at lunch and another at dinner, but I told myself it was stress and it would pass. Then Julian showed up at one of her colleagues' birthday parties about 2 months after Olivia was born. Some indie musician with a guitar and a trust fund who performed acoustic covers and talked about traveling through Europe finding himself. I met him once, shook his hand, thought he seemed pretentious but harmless. 3 weeks later, Elena was gone. That first morning without her, I sat in our kitchen with Olivia in my arms and genuinely didn't know if I could do this. I'd never changed a diaper before she was born, never given a bottle by myself, never spent more than an hour alone with a baby without Elena there as backup. I called out sick from work and spent the entire day just trying to keep my daughter alive, feeding her every 2 hours, changing diapers that somehow always leaked, walking circles around the apartment while she screamed with colic that I had no idea how to soothe. My mom drove in from Indiana that evening and found me crying in the nursery with Olivia finally asleep on my chest, and she didn't say much, just took over for a few hours so I could shower and eat something that wasn't cold pizza. She stayed for a week, teaching me everything: how to burp a baby properly, how to tell the difference between hungry cries and tired cries, how to function on 3 hours of sleep. And when she left, she hugged me and said, "You're going to be okay. You're stronger than you think." I didn't believe her, but I didn't have a choice except to try. Elena didn't contact me for 6 months. No phone calls, no texts, nothing. I found out through mutual friends that she and Julian had moved to Portland, that she was working at some experimental art space, and seemed happier than they'd ever seen her. Part of me wanted to track her down and scream at her, demand to know how she could just abandon her own daughter, but a bigger part of me was too exhausted and angry to care where she was or what she was doing. I filed for divorce through a lawyer who managed to track her down through the art space where she worked, and the papers came back signed within 3 weeks. Full custody granted with no contest, no attempt to see Olivia or negotiate visitation. It was like she'd erased us from her life completely, chosen her freedom over any responsibility, and moved on without looking back. Those first months were the hardest thing I've ever experienced. Working full-time while caring for a baby who didn't sleep through the night, missing work for doctor appointments and daycare illnesses, spending every penny I had on formula and diapers and childcare. I lost friends because I couldn't go out anymore, lost weight because I forgot to eat, lost any version of myself that wasn't just Olivia's dad trying desperately to keep everything together. But somewhere around her first birthday, something shifted. Olivia started sleeping better, started smiling and laughing at my terrible jokes, started reaching for me when she was scared or hurt. I'd put her to bed at night and sit in the living room with a beer, looking at photos on my phone of this tiny person I'd somehow kept alive for an entire year, and I'd feel this overwhelming combination of pride and grief. Pride because she was thriving despite everything. Grief because Elena was missing all of it. The first time Olivia rolled over, her first tooth, the way she'd grab my finger and hold on like I was her entire world. I realized that Elena had made her choice. She'd chosen freedom and self-discovery and whatever life she thought she deserved more than motherhood. And I'd made mine, not really by choice, but by necessity. I'd chosen to stay, to show up every single day, even when I was exhausted and scared and had no idea what I was doing. She'd chosen the life she wanted. I'd chosen the life Olivia needed. And sitting there in my quiet apartment with my daughter asleep down the hall, I understood something that would define the next 15 years. Someone had to stay, and it was always going to be me. Olivia was 3 years old when she asked me where her mommy was, and I had to decide in that moment what kind of father I was going to be, the one who lied to protect her, or the one who told her a truth she was too young to understand. We were sitting at the kitchen table eating chicken nuggets, and she just looked up at me with those big brown eyes and said, "Why don't I have a mommy like the other kids?" I told her that her mommy had to go away, that sometimes grown-ups make choices that are hard to explain, and that it wasn't her fault. She nodded like she understood, went back to eating her nuggets, and I sat there feeling like I'd just failed some crucial parenting test I didn't know I was taking. That conversation repeated itself in different forms over the years. At 5, when she made a Mother's Day card at school and didn't know who to give it to. At 7, when her best friend's mom picked her up from a playdate, and she asked why her own mom never did that. At 10, when she stopped asking altogether because she'd figured out that some questions don't have good answers. The years between Elena leaving and Olivia starting kindergarten were a blur of daycare drop-offs, business meetings I had to leave early, and an exhaustion so deep I sometimes forgot what day it was. I'd wake up at 6 to get Olivia ready, drop her at daycare by 7:30, work a full day pretending I had my life together, pick her up by 5:30, make dinner, give her a bath, read her 3 bedtime stories because she refused to sleep with less, and then collapse on the couch with whatever work I hadn't finished at the office. My coworkers stopped inviting me to happy hours. My college friends drifted away when I canceled plans for the 100th time, and my dating life was non-existent because who wants to date a single dad with a toddler and zero free time? I thought about Elena sometimes during those years, wondered if she ever thought about us, if she felt any guilt about leaving, or if she'd managed to convince herself she'd made the right choice. Mutual friends would occasionally mention seeing her posts on social media, at art shows, traveling through Southeast Asia, living in a converted van with Julian somewhere in New Mexico, and I'd feel this cold anger that she got to have adventures while I was home, giving my daughter antibiotics for her 4th ear infection of the year. When Olivia was 5, I met Anna at a parent-teacher conference. Her son was in Olivia's kindergarten class, and we ended up sitting next to each other in those tiny plastic chairs while the teacher talked about letter recognition and social development. Anna was a nurse at the Children's Hospital, recently divorced, with this calm presence that made you feel like everything was going to be okay even when it wasn't. We started talking after the conference, exchanged numbers so our kids could have playdates, and over the next year we built this careful friendship where neither of us wanted to rush into anything, but both of us were desperately lonely. Our first date was at a diner at 9 at night after both kids were asleep with babysitters, and we talked for 3 hours about everything except our exes, her love of terrible reality TV, my complete inability to cook anything that wasn't pasta, the way parenthood had made us both tougher and more fragile at the same time. She didn't try to be Olivia's mother, didn't push herself into our lives like some kind of replacement. She just showed up consistently and let my daughter decide what role she wanted her to play. The kids became inseparable too. Her son and Olivia turning into the kind of best friends who finished each other's sentences and got in trouble together at school. Anna and I got married when Olivia was 8, and by that point my daughter had started calling her mom on her own without anyone suggesting it. It happened gradually. First it was Anna helping with homework while I made dinner, then Anna braiding Olivia's hair before school, then Anna being the one Olivia ran to when she fell off her bike and scraped her knee badly enough to need stitches. I watched my daughter bond with this woman who had no biological obligation to love her, who chose every single day to show up and be present, and I understood something profound about what makes someone a parent. Elena had given birth to Olivia, but Anna was raising her. Sitting through school plays where Olivia played a tree, staying up all night when she had the flu, teaching her to stand up to bullies and be kind to people who were different. When Olivia was 12 and broke up with her first boyfriend, she cried in Anna's arms for 2 hours while Anna told her that heartbreak was temporary and she was going to be okay. That's when I knew for certain that biology means nothing compared to presence, that being a mother isn't about DNA. It's about showing up even when it's hard. Elena sent a few emails over the years, sporadic and awkward attempts at connection that never mentioned Olivia directly. She'd write about her life, a new job at a gallery in Santa Fe, a solo backpacking trip through South America, her and Julian breaking up and getting back together, like we were old friends catching up rather than a family she'd abandoned. I never responded. I didn't know her updates on the daughter she'd walked away from, didn't know her reassurance that we were fine without her. And we were fine, better than fine actually. Olivia was thriving in school, had friends and hobbies, and this confidence that came from knowing at least one parent would always be there. She played soccer, took art classes, went through a phase where she only wore purple, and grew into this smart, funny kid who looked exactly like Elena but had none of her selfishness. I'd look at my daughter sometimes and marvel that she'd turned out so well despite everything, that the abandonment that could have broken her had somehow made her stronger. Then one afternoon when Olivia was 15, I came home from work and found Elena standing on our front porch. I didn't recognize her at first. She looked older, worn down in a way that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with choices that hadn't worked out the way she'd planned. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, no makeup, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, and when she saw me get out of my car, she started crying before either of us said a word. I walked up the steps slowly, keys still in my hand, and waited for her to explain why she was here after 15 years of silence. She said she'd gotten sober 6 months ago, that the drinking had gotten bad after she and Julian split for good, that she'd realized in rehab that leaving was the biggest mistake of her life. She said she wanted to meet Olivia and try to build some kind of relationship, that she was ready to be a mother now. I stood there listening to her talk about therapy and regret and making amends, and I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no satisfaction at seeing her broken, just a cold emptiness where all my feelings about her used to be. Olivia came home 20 minutes later, Anna dropping her off after soccer practice, and she stopped dead when she saw the woman on our porch. I'd shown her exactly 2 photos of Elena over the years, both from before she was born, but somehow my daughter knew immediately who she was looking at. Maybe it was the way we both went silent, or the way this stranger was crying on our porch, or just some instinct about seeing features that mirrored her own. Elena tried to smile, started to say something, and Olivia just looked at her with this expression of complete indifference. Not hurt, not anger, just nothing. Anna came up behind Olivia and put a hand on her shoulder, and I saw Elena's face crumble when she realized what she was seeing. My daughter had a mother. She was standing right there, and it wasn't the woman who'd given birth to her. I walked Elena down to the sidewalk, away from my family, and said the only thing that mattered. You don't get to disappear for 15 years and come back as her mother. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and I watched her walk away for the second time in my life. This time I closed the door behind me, put my arm around my daughter, and realized that for the first time since that terrible night 15 years ago, I wasn't protecting myself. I was protecting her from someone who'd already proven they couldn't be trusted to stay. 2 weeks after Elena showed up on our porch, a letter arrived in the mail with a return address from a motel across town. It wasn't long, maybe half a page, and for the first time in 15 years, she wasn't making excuses or talking about her own journey of self-discovery. She was just asking if Olivia would be willing to meet her for coffee. No pressure, just once. I sat at the kitchen table staring at that letter for a long time. knowing that whatever I decided next would define what kind of father I really was. I could throw it away and protect my daughter from potential disappointment, or I could give her the choice that Elena never gave us when she left. That evening after dinner, I handed Olivia the letter and told her it was completely her decision, that whatever she chose I would support her, and that she didn't owe Elena anything just because they shared DNA. My daughter read it slowly, folded it back up, and looked at me with this maturity that shouldn't exist in a 15-year-old. She said she needed time to think about it, and I told her to take all the time she needed. 3 days later, Olivia came into my home office where I was working on quarterly reports and sat down in the chair across from my desk. She'd been quieter than usual since getting the letter, spending more time in her room, and I'd given her space to process everything without pushing. She told me she'd talked to Anna about it, that her mom, and she emphasized that word, had helped her understand that curiosity about Elena didn't mean betrayal of our family. Then she asked me what I thought she should do, and I realized this was one of those parenting moments where there was no right answer, just honest ones. I told her that Elena had made choices 15 years ago that hurt us both, that she'd chosen herself over being a mother, but that people sometimes change and sometimes they don't. I said that if she wanted to meet Elena to get answers or closure or just to see who this woman was, I wouldn't stop her, but that she should protect her heart because Elena had already proven once that she was capable of leaving. Olivia nodded, thought about it for another minute, and then asked if she could use my phone to send a text. She typed for maybe 30 seconds, showed me the message before sending it, and I felt this surge of pride so strong it almost hurt. The message said, "I already have a mother. Her name is Anna, and she's been here my entire life when you weren't. I don't need another one." Olivia sent it, handed me back my phone, and went to her room like she'd just completed some necessary but unpleasant task. I sat there looking at those words on my screen, understanding that my daughter had just made the most mature decision possible. She'd chosen the people who'd stayed over the person who'd left, chosen security over curiosity, chosen to protect the family we'd built rather than risk it for someone who'd already abandoned her once. Elena never responded to that message, and we never heard from her again for 6 months. Life went back to normal after that, or whatever version of normal our family had created. Olivia finished her sophomore year with straight A's, made varsity soccer, started talking about colleges even though that was still 2 years away. Anna got promoted to head nurse in the pediatric ICU, and I finally made senior financial manager after years of being passed over because I had to leave early for parent-teacher conferences and soccer games. We took a vacation to California that summer, our first real family trip, and spent a week at the beach doing absolutely nothing but eating too much and laughing at Anna's terrible attempts at surfing. There were moments during that trip when I'd look at my daughter and my wife and feel this overwhelming gratitude that we'd survived, that the abandonment that could have destroyed us had somehow made us stronger and more connected. Elena had left a hole in our lives 15 years ago, but we'd filled it with something better. We'd filled it with presence and consistency and the kind of love that shows up even when it's inconvenient. 6 months after Olivia sent that message, the three of us went to a coffee shop downtown on a Sunday afternoon. It was one of those hipster places with exposed brick and overpriced lattes, and we were sitting at a table near the window talking about Olivia's upcoming driver's test when I saw her. Elena was working behind the counter, wearing an apron with the shop's logo, her hair pulled back, taking orders and making drinks with this focused efficiency. She looked up, saw us sitting there, and our eyes met for maybe 3 seconds before she looked away. I didn't say anything to Olivia or Anna, just watched Elena work while my family laughed about something I'd missed. She didn't come over, didn't try to talk to us, just kept working like we were any other customers she didn't know. After about 10 minutes, she disappeared into the back room and didn't come out again before we left. I thought about that moment a lot over the next few weeks. Tried to understand what it meant that Elena had seen her daughter and chosen to walk away. Part of me wanted to believe it was cowardice, that she couldn't face what she'd lost, but a bigger part of me understood it was something else. It was acceptance. She'd finally realized that she'd made her choice 15 years ago, that the consequences of that choice were permanent, and that the most loving thing she could do now was stay away. She'd left once to save herself, to chase some idea of freedom and self-discovery that mattered more to her than being a mother. And now she was leaving again, but this time it wasn't about her. It was about us, about giving Olivia the space to be happy without the confusion of a biological mother who'd never actually been a parent. In some strange way, that second disappearance mattered more than anything she could have said or done if she'd walked over to our table. Olivia graduated high school 3 years later, got accepted to her first choice college with a partial soccer scholarship, and gave a speech at her graduation party about the importance of showing up. She thanked Anna for being the mother she needed, thanked me for never giving up even when things were hard, and didn't mention Elena once. Not out of bitterness, but because Elena simply wasn't part of her story anymore. The night before she left for college, Olivia came into my room and asked if I ever regretted staying, if I ever wished I'd been the one who got to leave and start over. I told her the truth, that those first years were the hardest thing I'd ever experienced, that there were nights I cried from exhaustion and fear, but that I'd never once regretted choosing her over my own comfort. Being a parent isn't about biology or shared genetics. It's about the daily decision to stay when leaving would be easier, to show up when you're exhausted, to put someone else's needs above your own, even when no one's watching. Elena taught me what parenthood isn't. It isn't performance or biological obligation or something you do when it's convenient. And Anna taught me what it is. It's presence. It's consistency. It's the quiet heroism of being there for every mundane moment that builds a childhood. I'm 43 now. Olivia is in her third year of college studying psychology, and Anna and I just celebrated our 13th wedding anniversary. I haven't seen or heard from Elena in 6 years, and I hope for her sake that she found whatever she was looking for when she left us that night. But I also know that forgiveness isn't something that's owed, that love is proven by staying, and that sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is disappear when their presence would only cause more harm. Elena made her choice, I made mine. And the difference is that 15 years later, my daughter knows exactly who her real parents are, the ones who stayed. So here's what I want to know. Did I handle this right? Should I have encouraged Olivia to give Elena a chance? Or was protecting her from more potential abandonment the right call? And for those of you who've been abandoned by a parent, how did you deal with them trying to come back into your life years later? I think about this sometimes, wonder if I let my own anger influence my daughter's decision, or if I did exactly what a father should do by letting her choose for herself. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.